So I'm currently at Gen Con looking at all this glorious art, and I have to wonder, how is it legal to sell artwork of copyrighted characters? Well, the short answer is that it's not. It's not legal at all. In fact, pretty much everyone here is breaking the law! But that does not mean that you shouldn't do it. Make pretty things, please. Also, obligatory disclaimer, this video does not constitute legal advice or construe a payer-legal-client relationship between us. I am not your lawyer. And sitting down so I don't bump into anyone, let's explain how fair use works. So fair use, or fair dealing in Canada, is an exception to certain forms of copyright legislation, and it basically allows you to use copyrighted material if you are using it for a handful of specific protected purposes. Now, books can and have been written on how complex fair use and fair dealing are, but in general, they prescribe a list of factors that courts have to consider on a case-by-case basis when they're evaluating whether certain use of copyrighted material is fair use or fair dealing. For example, this is a list of some of the factors that courts will consider when looking at an example of fair dealing in Canada. What was the purpose of the use? How many copies did you make? Is there a public interest in you making it? Probably not. Now, that's all fine and good, but these kinds of artworks are being distributed widely, with many copies being made for a commercial purpose and for a purpose that probably doesn't have public policy protection. Sorry, your art's pretty, but it's not, like, educational. Now, you can avoid this problem entirely if you just make characters that are generic enough that they are sufficiently different from the original copyrighted work. For example, a generic dragon instead of Alduin specifically from Skyrim. And while a lot of the art that I'm surrounded by is definitely generic enough to kind of be considered a derivative work, it's close enough that you could definitely argue that it is copyrighted. Meaning that if companies wanted to, they could shut down pretty much every single fan art seller at this convention. There's the rub. See, unlike trademarks, you don't have to always protect your copyrights. You can pick and choose who you want to enforce them against. And I don't know if you've noticed, but there are a lot of artists here, all spreading free, earnest publicity for whatever franchises they happen to be creating art for. Sending cease and desist letters to all these earnest fans and amazing artists would be unnecessary, counterproductive, probably result in a huge backlash, and most importantly would be impossibly expensive. Copyright law is so complicated and on such a specific case-by-case basis that you would have to hire some very expensive lawyers to take down all of this material. Lawyers often bill hourly, I'll remind you. This doesn't mean that it never happens if a company isn't extremely petty, or if you're such a large art organization that you're directly competing with the copyright holder. Yeah, you might get takedown notices, or you might get them for any other reason. Again, not legal advice. But all told, this is kind of an area where there are so many fans who have gotten so used to making fan art that they've kind of made copyright law obsolete. Spread the word, nerds are more powerful than the law.